Cool.
His cum rag is still in the background.
Don't tell him that because he'll get self-conscious and go take it down.
It's a towel. It's a bath
Can you
towel.
Yeah, and I
close the closet?
There's no doors.
Is there a picture of Lisa Ann on the other wall that we have to worry about?
he closes the
No,
closet and there's just a picture, a poster on
that'd be
it.
super tacky. That'd be really tacky.
With your best friends Trey, Sterling, and Matt, the film Schmucks.
What's up, guys? It's the Film Schmucks here. Couple of schmucks. We review movies each week. Sometimes it'll be a new movie. Sometimes it'll be one that's old and dear and near to our hearts. And this is one of those. Train to Busan is what we're reviewing. I'll be honest, it's my pick. So whatever words you hear come from these men's mouth, blame it on me, whether it be praise or folly. Uh, I guess I can just jump right into why I picked the movie and stuff. I'm a big horror movie fan, and I've always been a big zombie guy. I like zombie stuff. Even obviously the zombie craze is kind of over. I feel like from like 2000 to I don't know to a good couple of decades, zombies have always been popular in horror. But I feel like there was a real time where zombies were just everywhere, video games, movies, and everything. But there's there's a lot of zombie movies I don't really like. Like there's a ton of zombie movies. There's only a handful that I actually like a lot and think are pretty good movies. I like 28 Days Later. That's one people cite a lot. For my
Yeah.
money, from in the 2010s, so 2010 to 2020, that decade, Train to Busan is the best zombie movie. Which I think is high praise because there's so many zombie movies that for an entire decade, and not only that, we can get into it later whether you even describe this as a horror movie because there's obviously horror things. I think it's almost more of an action movie. But if it is a horror movie, I'd say it's one of the best horror movies probably that I've seen in the decade as well. So Korean movie, foreign film. Obviously, we've talked a lot on this show about Koreans just all of a sudden just taking over the movie scene and coming out with some real bangers. I think Train to Busan, one of the best. One of the best that I've seen. So let's get into it. I'm dying to hear what you guys think of this bad boy.
Yeah, I can get into it. Um, I'd have to agree with you. I think, for me, it is kind of a low bar as far as like the zombie genre of films because I don't know if I really liked any of them except for 28 Days Later, which I just watched this past week for the first time.
Hmm.
And I really enjoyed that. But in all honesty, I really think this is the best I've ever seen in that genre. And I don't even think it's that close. Even though 28 Days Later is a good movie,
Yeah.
I think this one exceeds that by a lot. And I think a lot of that has to do with the action. The intensity is really good. It's very palpable. And a lot of that has to do with the performances as well. I think the kid in this movie might be the best kid acting I've ever seen, and I don't even think it's that close.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, so like good action, pretty decent makeup.
Yeah.
Um, I like kind of aspects of the design, like the veins, and kind of the
Yeah.
eyes. But so yeah, overall, yeah, really enjoyed it a lot.
Trey.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, I'll preface. I really like World War Z with
Mm-hmm.
Brad Pitt. I think that's real good. They're gonna have a sequel. I think they've been going back and forth on that. Um, Shaun of the Dead, maybe. I'm not. I like that.
That's number one for me, baby.
Oh, ever?
Ever. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So, I have nothing against zombie movies. I will say about this movie that what Sterling kind of said at the very end was that the makeup was really good. A lot of the effects were pretty good. There was some stuff I just rolled my eyes at, and yeah, that's the extent of what I can say that I liked about this movie. Um,
Oh boy.
so I mean, what can I say? My neck hurts like badly from how many times I just shook my head at the screen, like a lot. Like I think once a minute at least.
Oh my gosh.
Um, You know what? I'll add one good thing. I think Sterling's right. That kid actor is pretty good. I mean, he's a little hyped up about saying it's not even close. This is not even close. That's a little, you're overhyping a little bit, but she was a good kid actor. That's about it for the acting. Well, you guys, you want to go to specifics, and I can just come in and be heel.
Yeah. Turn
I mean,
heel. Yeah. Come in on the heel.
honestly, my neck was hurting near
So,
the end. I
well,
was
I think
like,
we can
oh
get to
my
this on the
gosh.
head turns. On the head turns.
Oh,
I guess this we might get into spoiler territory here. I don't know where we're gonna go.
let's
So I'm
just
just gonna
go.
say it
Yeah.
now. But I'm just gonna say now that probably we'll get into spoiler stuff if we get to the head turns. One of the things I like about this movie is if you watch a lot of zombie movies, characters are constantly doing really stupid stuff. There are a couple of moments in this movie, really one, that to me I couldn't suspend my disbelief. It just didn't make sense to me, and I'll get to that in a second. But I will say overall, I think the characters, there's not a lot of times where I'm like, as far as the main characters at least, there's not a lot of times where I'm like, well, why would they do that or why didn't they do that? It makes sense what they're doing and why they're doing it for the majority of the movie. And especially on the most intense parts. I also like, one of the things I liked a lot, let's just get into where I think the movie really takes off. You have a typical story at the beginning that's, I think they convey pretty well. It's a little on the nose, but we get it. This guy works too much. He doesn't actually spend that much time with his daughter. I thought the way when he bought the Wii U and just the way they do it where he's like, what's the matter? You don't like it? And she kind of looks up and the camera pans over. She already has one. I thought that was a pretty good way of showing that. But let's get through we understand the relationship there. To me, where the rubber hits the road is when they stop at the first station and shit goes south, where they realize that the first city that they stop in, I think it was Daejeon or something like that, is not safe, and they all have to get back on the train. From that point on, I think the movie is just pure tense. It's just intense, the rest of the movie. And to me, the moment where this goes from being an okay, this is an interesting idea for a zombie movie to where it turns into a great movie is when you realize the loved ones, the pregnant wife, the girl, the granny, they're all on car 13 and they need to get to car 15, and you look up and you realize they're in car 9. And they have to go through these cars to get to save these people. For my money, that's one of the most tense just series of events in any, like, if you call it a horror movie, this is why I say it's almost more of an action movie. But to me, I was like, when they just start going, okay, we realize what we got to do here, and you have the badass dad who has like really badass dad abilities, future dad. He's just got like dad abilities, which is weird. He's like punching zombies and shit. And then the main dad, and then the kid with the baseball bat. When they start taping up so that they don't get bit, you're like, okay, I like that they don't go, what are these things? What are these creatures? We don't know what they are. They're like, they're zombies. We get it. I like that they just kind of like move on past that, because every zombie movie has to go, there's always moments where someone's a zombie and they go, is that you, Brad? What's wrong with you? What's wrong with your eyes? And then they get bit. There's no bullshit zombie cliches in this movie for the most part. Anyway, I thought that was a good jumping off point, because to me, that's when the movie gets great, is when they have to make their way through the cars. And I think it's just one of the best sequences in any zombie movie I've seen.
Yeah. I mean, it took, because I felt like that was like the halfway point, and I'm like, oh, they're suiting up and getting ready to go. I'm like, this is where it's going to get good. And it kind of fizzled out at the end, where I kept on shaking my head when the people wouldn't let them in.
Yeah.
And I wrote down, this movie had no consistency at all.
What was inconsistent?
So the zombie chick that started the whole thing on the train, at least, she comes in and she's, all hurt, maybe bit, and she's like reeling in pain and trying, whatever. They didn't show it as if it was like 30 seconds she turned. Yeah. So throughout the movie, everybody, it was like there was no, like, it didn't take, this person took 15 seconds.
Yeah.
This person took 5 minutes. Like,
I agree with you. I agree with you. They were inconsistent on when the bite. The only thing I noticed was that when people turned really quickly into zombies, they got bit on the neck or the head, and when people took a while to turn to a zombie, they got bit on the leg or the hand. That's the one thing they didn't say it, but if you notice, anyone who's getting eaten on the neck or getting bit by a bunch of zombies or basically getting devoured, they turn really quick. Everyone else who turns a little slower gets bit on the hand or like the foot or the ankle, like the first girl. So I could imagine but I agree with you that it takes a little bit of work to defend that. Like I have to go, oh, okay, well maybe it spread slower because he got bit further from the neck or something. But they don't ever say anything, and that is the one. Well, it's not a cliche, but it is just an inconsistency. I agree with that. Although I don't think it matters too much for the story.
Yeah. Um, I, Trey, I'm kind of curious what you think about. It seems like maybe the most issues you have is with the scene when the people are not letting the other people in to the train or the one of the
Yeah, I didn't.
carts. Is
Yeah,
that
so they
accurate?
like, well, how do you know they're not infected? But like I said, that's where the inconsistency comes from because they would by that point they would be infected already. And so see that was just retarded to me because if they were infected, they wouldn't be texting. So it was ridiculous to me.
Well, I
I
think the
mean,
people in the
I'm like, I wanted them to break the door down, which was awesome. Like, finally, kill them all. I want them all to die. They got in there and they're standing there, like, you're infected, and they're standing there, not turning, not getting sick, nothing. And if I was them, I'm like, please just have them sit down and it's like, hey, we're infected, don't touch us. And I would have sat right there. I was like, please have them stand up to them. And then when that old lady sister opened the door, I'm like, yes, finally, the assholes die. So there's like,
yeah,
I guess
yeah.
one good point, and then they have to have the asshole survive. I
Well, I think he survived because he's an asshole. But I think that you're forgetting that people in those situations, people are extremely irrational in situations like that.
Yeah.
I've never
Well,
been in a zombie outbreak. I'm
Well,
sorry.
we have been in a pandemic, and people went and bought a bunch of toilet paper and stocked up on it. That's just a tip. That's an irrational thing you can see in the real world that
well,
people do in a situation when they're afraid. That doesn't make any sense. So I think in that
yeah,
situation where
Did
people are
they use the
literally
toilet paper?
well, that's moving to a different point, but you know what I mean. Like that's an irrational thing to do, but people did it because
yeah,
they were in a afraid situation in the real world. And I think that this thing is people are dying around you. They're safe. They're in a safe thing. It's even there's an interesting there's even an interesting evolutionary point to it, which is that of the way people put up borders and are afraid of contamination. So there's actually more of a story there of like if you were in a safe position, you don't even want to open the door to let people
hmm
in if it could harm you in any way. And in a
sure.
an event like that with like people being extremely afraid and extremely rational, and you have someone there, the guy who's an asshole who's sort of convincing them all to be afraid, then
Yeah.
I don't know. I thought that was perfectly rational. I do have a problem with that scene, but I didn't, and that's the scene I was talking about where I had to suspend my disbelief a little bit. I didn't quite get why the old lady opened the door. There's reasons that
Love that.
there's reasons that I could have understood why she would have done that, but they didn't give me a good enough. It was just a little too much where it was like because it was unclear. I'm like, is she doing this? I guess she's just doing this out of spite. But
Yeah.
it was just a little too far where it just didn't quite make sense why all of a sudden she would do that. And I mean, I guess she was in shock and her sister died, but it would have been a little more convincing to me if like she was like in shock and didn't believe that her sister was a zombie and was like, I need to touch her, let her in or something. That would make more sense to me than just her talking to herself for some reason. Why did she have a monologue with herself? I didn't like that. The monologue that she has. Maybe even if she just did it and didn't say anything, then you could leave it up to interpretation. It would have been better. That's probably one of the only moments. There's one other moment that I didn't like either, but I think that that's one of the few moments that was just where I was like, I just didn't buy the motivation of the character. I didn't understand why that was enough or what her motivation was exactly.
hmm
Well, I didn't
Yeah.
like that the kids with baseball bats never used them. Well, the three of them. I like they were running with baseball
Yeah,
bats and they
yeah.
didn't use them at all. They didn't get ready to use them. Unbelievable. Like man,
Yeah.
another one. Another one bites the dust. Two of them, please. I mean, God.
Uh, well, I don't really have anything more to add, I guess, because you both kind of took the words out of my mouth as far as that moment. Because I kind of share the same kind of frustrations with the people.
Yeah.
Because you're seeing the perspective of the other people trying to come in, and they just fought through all those zombies, and I do share the frustrations for sure, but I think story wise it does make sense knowing how much fear can consume people and lead them to irrational conclusions. So,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So,
And I think the real thing about that scene, motivation aside, is the intensity of probably the best character. My favorite character in the movie is the husband of the pregnant wife. I don't remember if they say his name or I forgot it. It's harder to remember when it's foreign names, but um, just because he was such a badass, like I like that he just was straight up punching zombies most of the time. And whenever they're making their way through the cards, just wrecking people, he was doing like judo moves and shit. Like he was like breaking their necks and he was like judo throwing them against the walls and the windows. That was just like, me and Christy just like really like that character. And one of the good things about watching this the second time, and this is heavy spoilers, but the first time I watched the movie, or the only thing I could remember from when I watched it before, I remembered the beginning. I remembered certain scenes I liked. I couldn't remember who died and how. I actually thought that everyone died because I in my head remembered the little girl singing in the tunnel, but I didn't remember her being with the pregnant woman. So I was like, do they leave at a certain point or do they die? I couldn't remember. So it was kind of cool. It was enough time that had passed that when I watched it this time, I was able to be kind of like in suspense because I couldn't remember exactly what happened to certain characters. But I think him being such a great character made that scene where they're just trying to get in and he's holding them back in the door and the other people are holding the door closed. I thought that was such a tense scene that it made it and that's where it makes you so pissed off about the people. What makes you so angry is that he would have survived if they would have opened it, and they would have all been fine. But that the badass guy having to turn and hold off the horde. But it made that such a tense scene, probably the most tense, other than maybe the ending
yeah.
chase.
Well, it's actually a pretty good arc because, at the beginning, the main character, he's an asshole and the badass dad calls him out for it. And, he's
Yeah,
just pretty honest with him about his behavior. And of course, at the beginning, he almost didn't open the door for him and his wife. And so, he called him out for that. And then by the end, the fact that the main character is trying to save him and
yeah.
it's futile, there's nothing he can do about it really. But he's putting all of his effort in because now he's turned a loop. His character has kind of redeemed himself. So
I,
I like that a lot. That
and
reverse.
I think this is something I thought I saw this time that I thought was interesting, and maybe I'm reading too deep into it. But obviously, the real story, is about the father and his daughter. I mean, that's the real story. The situation is sort of just playing to that. And I got very attached. I mean, I was really from the beginning attached to the story between the daughter and the father. I think that if I didn't like that relationship or didn't care about it, I could imagine not caring as much about the movie because the stakes are way lower if you don't. But having this relationship with the daughter, and there's actually an interesting scene, which is when they're all in the bathroom, the husband, the dad, and the baseball player, and they have a moment where they're kind of joking with each other. And I think they know that things are going to get more intense. And the bigger guy says to the main dad, he's like, hey, I get it. You got to work so that, later your kids will appreciate it when they're older. Your daughter will appreciate it later, which is the first time he gives him any credit for being that type of guy. And what's interesting is I almost wonder if that was intentional in a way that later the dad ends up obviously turning and dying. And it's funny. He's like, oh, she'll appreciate it when she's old. Later you'll be able to appreciate it. And it almost seemed like that was part of the message too. Was like, well, you don't know when a zombie apocalypse is gonna hit or when you're gonna die. So there was a big message there about him just like actually spending more time with the daughter, and I thought that was very touching.
Yeah, the way he died, I
The
definitely
acting in
got
that whole scene is so good.
the way yeah, I got choked up actually,
I
to be
did.
honest.
I did both times watching it.
And it's a great camera shot too, of just his shadow
Yeah.
falling off the train. Yeah, it's
There's
really, really touching.
there's one thing I don't like about that scene. It's actually before the touching part because I think the little girl, like you said, is a great actress. I mean, she just looked like she was legitimately crying. And when he's trying to like focus because he realizes he's bitten and he's just trying to tell her, okay, you guys need to do this, and he's kind of like panicking, but he's going quick. And when he finally just has to break away and go out, it's like, it's such a
Yeah.
emotional moment. But way before that, when they're on the train, which that chase with all the zombies and the shots of all the zombies chasing them,
Yeah.
that was awesome. But whenever they realize the main asshole guy is there and he's a zombie, I didn't get why. For the only time we want to talk about the inconsistency that Trey mentioned, this is the most inconsistent. All of a sudden, that guy is like half zombie and he's like lost his mind kind of, and he's like, "Sir, I need to
Yeah.
go save my mom," or whatever. It's like, I would have rather him just not said anything. It didn't make sense to me. Why is he talking as like a half zombie right now? It was kind of cool him panicking when he realized he was a zombie, but I would have rather him just come out as a zombie and the same situation happen. It was a little much.
It's the most convenient thing, I feel like, in the whole movie. It's the
Yeah.
most like, they made this because they wanted to do this moment
Yeah.
with dialogue. So
Right. Yeah. But other than that, it was fine. If the acting wasn't good and if the moment wasn't so touching, I think that the shots back of her as a baby and him holding him would have been a little much, only because the way they were shot looked like a weird K-drama. But it's such an emotional
yeah,
moment that it was hard to, you can't really shit on it because it was too touching. And honestly, it continues after that because they have the long silence, like somber moment of the lady and her getting off the train and slowly walking. And whenever I thought, whenever they start walking through the tunnel and the guy's like, we can't verify they're zombies, go ahead and shoot them. And it was
yeah.
great because I knew what happened, but her finishing the song and singing it, I mean, and that's the part where she's, I think, best, that little girl, because it's so sincere, her crying and singing the song. I mean, it's hard not to get choked up on
It's a
that.
great, it's a great, it's a great callback because I really thought the mom was going to be dead. I really thought she was going to be shot in the head,
Yeah,
and I just didn't think about, well, I didn't know they were going to make a callback like that. So that was good.
yeah. The whole thing with the song was good. And I think the first time I watched it, I didn't notice that they mentioned. I must have missed the second time they talk about the song in the car or something, because this time I was like, oh, that was there the whole time, the song thing. Because the first time I was just like, oh, she's singing the song from the play at the beginning, but I didn't make the connection. Then I was like, then it was even more touching and meaningful that she finished the song because she was singing it for the dad.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
Well,
Oh, Trey?
Matt, you mentioned something a little bit ago that reminded me of something. It was that how big are these bathrooms on this train? I'm like, I've been in some bathrooms in like high volume transportation, airplanes, what, a bus.
yeah,
Been three grown men comfortably.
and a camera guy.
Give me two breaks of my Kit Kat bar and a Snickers in the back, because that was ridiculous.
I didn't think about that, but that is true. And it
So,
also it seemed like
all the four,
it's like Harry Potter. It was like depending on how many people were in the bathroom, the bigger it was all of a sudden.
yeah, because there was the four people, the two women and the kid and another guy or whatever.
Yeah.
There's two different scenes. Yeah,
Well, and
like
that's a good point because when all the people, the little girl and the three people and all of them are in the bathroom, it's like kind of squished, but they all fit. And then when the three guys are in the bathroom, it's kind of squished, but they all fit. And it's like, wait a minute, it doesn't quite. The dimensions aren't adding up fair. I didn't think about that. Yeah, I was gonna say I wrote it down. There's one other thing. I think one little moment that takes me out of like it's an unfortunate to me. The very first zombie you see, which is the girl who gets bit on the train, is the one that overacts the most. And I do think that zombie, that girl, when she gets in and she's like, and like moving around, it was like the way she acted was a little too much, but everything else was, most of the other time it was fine. But I was like, I wish the first zombie was a little more subtle because she was just, I don't know, I thought that lady overacted a little bit.
Well, I'd say the deer,
Oh,
overreacted too.
that
That's
was
the
cool.
first
I love
zombie.
that. I actually like that first scene a lot.
that
Yeah, no,
that
I like it too. I'm joking around.
that's what made me confused. Not that later on it made me confused looking back at that scene because it obviously gets hit by a vehicle. The vehicle drives away, it pans over, it cracks its back, and it heals, essentially. I'm like, oh, is this gonna be a zombie movie where people heal and like nothing like it's like they're all like Wolverine in them or something like
Yeah,
so later on it really didn't coincide with what I saw earlier because obviously it snapped its back into place and then just
yeah.
stared at the camera. I'm like, oh, that's weird. Like, so I was really confused looking back. I'm like, that doesn't work together.
What doesn't work? I'm confused. What
So
part?
obviously the deer got hit, ran
Yeah,
over, broke its back, bones, whatever, and it shows it like looks like it's in reverse, kind of like Tenet kind of thing.
yeah. It
It,
stands back
it
up.
gets on all fours, looks brand new. I'm like,
What's
okay, cool. This is a different zombie movie, so I was kind of hyped up for it at the beginning, and then obviously they didn't do the callback to that. It just did regular zombie stuff.
Yeah, I mean, none of the zombies die that they fight.
I'm just saying that they you saw broken arm
Oh, you're
zombies
saying
and
that
all this.
they set it up as if this is a big part of it, is that they're
Yeah, it could
okay.
heal because obviously they did like a flip. It did like a flip, cracked its back, and got back
Yeah,
on all fours. It was brand new. So
I
yeah,
don't know what healing zombies would have added to the movie because with the story that there was told, I don't know what that would have. I mean, they do heal or whatever. Obviously, they can't kill them because there's never any scene where a zombie actually dies, which I thought was interesting. If you look at it, they always just have to kind of fend them off. Um, but yeah, I see what you mean. I didn't think about it just because I didn't think I don't. It didn't seem relevant to the rest of the story.
I mean, the only question I have is obviously, does the virus or whatever, does it transmit from the animals to the people or vice
Yeah.
versa? That's another question. But again, this is a one-shot movie. It's not going to be a franchise, which is good,
Oh
by the
yeah.
way.
I'm
I'm
glad.
glad it,
Yeah.
I'm glad it's a standalone movie, but that's one of those things where you're not going to be able to build on stuff like that because
They
it's just putting seeds. It's not really like
that
showing the full thing.
that reminds me of a nitpick actually because I think they could have taken this out. Is I thought the premise and it was actually a little confusing. The premise that the company that the main dad works for somehow caused the whole thing by
yeah, that's
some
weird.
kind of dumping waste or something. That was so unnecessary. He could have just been a big businessman and they could have left the virus outbreak a little vague. I thought they did good at the beginning with like the little subtle newspaper thing where the fish are dead and stuff like that. I just didn't get why they had to connect it to him, like his company did it or whatever. And it was actually confusing. And part of it was just maybe the subtitles and stuff like, and maybe if I rewound it. But I've watched this twice, and I didn't quite understand. They weren't very clear about exactly that he's talking to the subordinate guy on the phone. They kind of imply that their company did something like waste or like maybe toxic waste type thing. I'm
Yeah.
reading that in because I don't, and maybe it
Well,
was more clear and I just didn't understand it. But both times I was like, that was unnecessary. They could have just been like the zombie, someone else did it. I thought the
yeah.
phone scene there was a little too much.
Yeah, I think the biggest weakness for me probably is And again, it doesn't really hurt the movie because it's barely in there. But the business side, like the beginning scene in the business,
Yeah,
I think it was a little slow. And him calling his secret operative who told him inside information, like
yeah.
it wasn't like necessary.
Yeah, none of it
But
was necessary. And I agree with you. The business part, the in the office at the beginning, I think the scene where the scene worked was at the very end, where he's kind of talking to the guy, and then he asks at the end, he goes, "Wait a minute, what are little kids like these days, or whatever?" But they could have just had just that part. They didn't need the other 3 minutes of like weird exposition about buying up corporate accounts or whatever it was. I know I
sure.
sound like a schmuck over here, but I don't remember what. That's the point. It was boring. I didn't pay attention
Yeah.
to it.
Well, anyway, that's just really only the negatives. I want to go to another positive that I
Mhm.
kind of enjoyed a lot. Obviously, the setting, the fact that it's in confined space, like this
Yeah.
train, that's what made it really intense. And also, I appreciate a zombie film that it's all about the collapse of society and kind of the beginning stage of the zombie apocalypse, which is kind of fresh in a way because I feel like a lot of zombie content is about like months or years after the initial collapse,
It's like
and it's all about the
post-apocalypse. Yeah.
society. Yeah, post-apocalypse, like they're living with the zombie hordes. And this one, you're seeing kind of the beginning of it, and I kind of appreciated that. Just kind of seeing that fresh perspective in comparison. So, but also them being in the train just made it that much more visceral and close quarters, and it made it for very interesting context for sure.
Yeah, I think it. I think conceptually that was good because I don't know. It's interesting. Zombie movies, a lot of times will try to do. I think uh, things don't have to be so complicated. And I think this is a good thing of that. It's like somebody was like, "Oh, what if people had to deal with zombies on a train?" Which is pretty
Mm-hmm.
simple, matched with an engaging like story and everything else. But I do think that was a great idea, and I think the subtle thing about the zombies, like not being able to like being attracted to sounds and sight, that was an interesting way to go because a lot of zombie movies will do sort of like as if zombies have a sixth sense or like a smell or something. And I thought that was an interesting way to do it because of the tunnels with the train. I thought that was pretty clever, the way they did it. And they also didn't do it in a way where two things that zombie movies do a lot is like, so the zombies have the weird thing where if they're not looking at you, they kind of shut down a little bit. That they could have done it where they made it so clear, like they explain it over and over again and hold your hand. And they also could have done it the other way where it's so subtle that you don't even understand what's happening. I thought they did it in a good way where you kind of understand with the characters because there's just a couple of things, like when they put the stuff up and the zombies seem to calm down. And then the kooky guy, the weird like homeless kind of guy who like throws his coat on top of the zombie's head and it just kind of stops. There's a couple things like that. So then by the time they in the train when the tunnels happen and they're like, okay, they're attracted to the sight and the sound. You were already on board, and it was like that whole sequence was great with them having to climb, and especially when you add a kid, it just when you add the little girl to it, it's like holy shit.
Oh, dude, yeah. Well, I loved it every time the zombies would like get in a cluster, and then they would just like all like I don't know how to explain it, but it'd be like an explosion of zombies. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah, yeah. Like they were
Everyone would
piling. It
just
was a little World War Z, to be honest. I don't know when. I don't
yeah.
remember which came first. I think this came out in what 2018 or something like that. Or am I off? Is it way
Uh,
earlier?
I can't remember.
But that was something that looked like they almost were inspired a little bit by the World War Z movie because at the very end, especially, which as far as visuals, that kind of shot of the train going and just all that's the most zombies you kind of see all running and them being dragged. That was very cool. One of the other parts I liked a lot was when the train crash happens and they're all stuck under the train sideways and you're just seeing the zombies on the other side of the glass. I mean, the way that looked visually was creepy. I was like, oh my god. It was very tense.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh boy. There were some visual effects though that obviously it looked like a green screen, and
Yeah, yeah.
it wasn't composed as well as it could have been. But I do think, if I had to go more on the technical side of the movie, I think it actually looked pretty good. Like it was good kind of color correction
Hmm.
overall. I feel like it was kind of colorful for a zombie movie,
Yeah, yeah, that's
which I
true. It
I
was
thought
all in
was
the
pretty cool.
daytime, which was yeah. I mean, almost all of it's in the daytime, so
Hmm.
which that's actually an interesting point if we want to get into theoreticals here. If when the tunnels go by, if when they're in the tunnels they basically all stop, does that mean at night people would have a much better chance at fighting the zombies? Because does that mean when the sun goes down, zombies are going to have a way harder time like organizing or
Yeah,
fighting? That's an interesting thing. Because
yeah.
then
I
it's
mean,
the opposite of most movies. It's like, it's like at night you would go out and kill them, and then during the day you would bunker down.
yeah, yeah. It's interesting. I don't know. Maybe we should make the sequel, or maybe we should just leave it alone. I don't know.
Train to L.A. and it's me and Trey just coming coming toward coming to get you in L.A. or something.
That'd be kind of cool.
Trey, it's me going like, I want to see Sterling, and Trey's like, look, we're gonna go to Disney in a couple months, all right? We can't go right now. And I'm like, Trey, take me to see Sterling, and you're like, this little piece of shit. And then he's taking me. I don't want to go on the train by myself, and he takes me. It's like a parody.
Listen, this sounds like this sounds like an Escape from New York versus Escape from LA situation where the sequel is going to be 10 times worse
Oh,
than the original.
are you uh are you teasing your next picks?
Well, I don't think we're going to watch that. No, unless we want to watch Kurt Russell surfing. I mean, that's the funniest scene
You
by
sold
far.
me. He surfs in those
Yeah,
movies. Which one? L.A. Because New
Escape from
York's the
LA. Yeah,
first one, right? I've seen some of New Escape
yeah.
from New York.
Escape from New York is pretty decent. Like, it's not a very good action movie, but it's like
It's fun.
aesthetically, it's fun.
Yeah.
Escape from LA, it just, I think the fact that John Carpenter wasn't involved in it maybe didn't help. He was involved in the original, so.
It's like
But anyway,
Halloween.
yeah,
Everything that Carpenter doesn't touch isn't real. It doesn't exist,
uh,
exactly.
right?
yeah, I agree. I think, well, the Escape from New York, I saw some of it, and I watched Big Trouble in Little China, which I actually really
Mhm.
liked, and then I watched Escape from New York right after, and it felt like, for some reason, Kurt Russell works perfectly in like B style action movies. He's
Oh,
just like
yeah.
he's the leading man of B movies.
Snake Plissken, baby.
Steak foreskin? Excuse me.
Plissken. You sick
Listen,
son of a
what?
bitch. Trey, do you have final thoughts? Seems like you have final thoughts.
You know, what I will say is that, like with Parasite for Matt, The Master, and Matt's one of Matt's first picks, which was a kind of a half zombie, half documentary, or whatever that zombie movie you had. What was it called?
One Cut of the Dead.
Yeah,
It's
One Cut of the
it's
Dead.
really a movie about making a
After
movie.
so both of us have sat on films, and it kind of got better in our minds. And I didn't call him out then, but I'm gonna call him out today. Matt, like I do with Sterling, I gotta call it how it is. It was a bad pick this week, and that's okay. We all have a bad week. I know I have, and Sterling has had plenty. So, because Sterling will never be unforgiven. And anyway,
I'm gonna hurt my neck. I'm shaking my head so much.
yeah, and you've only shaken around once. You got a weak neck, Sterling. You got to strengthen that up. But anyway, so to me, and I didn't say this earlier, but I was thinking it kind of when I was trying to explain. Like, I don't hate all zombie movies or dislike. I just feel like a lot of them kind of feel the same. So this one didn't feel special to me. I really didn't get hooked because, like you guys mentioned about how they went to his office and it was really slow. That took me out of it. So it's just this one didn't work for me. So I apologize for nothing for not liking it, but I just didn't like it. Sorry, guys.
Woo! That's okay. Well, it's okay because as with One Cut of the Dead, I think anyone else who saw the movie will agree with me. So
This
that's
movie
both
or
good.
One Cut of the Dead?
Both. They're both
Not-
really well
My mind,
received movies
I
by
would
audiences.
bet you my bottom dollar. I ain't gonna
I'm
change
just
for me.
saying, and I'm not, this isn't an appeal to popularity, but I'm just saying that you are on a very small losing window of not liking this movie or One Cut of the Dead, both appreciated by audiences and film critics everywhere.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay.
But I can't say anything because, I didn't like Parasite, and that was an Oscar nominated, cherished by both critics and audience.
Oscar winner.
Yeah, I thought you said you eventually kind of looked back on it with a better look.
Yeah, I didn't
That's
think
why I
it wasn't
mentioned you.
diverse enough for me. That was my
Oh my
main
God.
issue with it. I noticed there was no
Oh
black
my God.
people. It was all the same race. I didn't like that. And they were all straight, and I didn't like that either. So that's the main
I
reason I
tried
didn't like
to
Parasite.
do a comparison for my little take to compare. Whatever.
Parasite, it's 2021, not 1962. Okay, you could have cast a black person in that movie. So,
At all of this, this is ridiculous.
am I wrong? I'm sorry. Did I forget that there were some minorities in that movie? I didn't see any. No, Train to Busan. I think that jokes aside, I think that it's really Train to Busan as a zombie fan. It's refreshing to see a movie that's not just a good zombie movie, but a good movie. So if you're a horror fan, if you're a zombie fan, and you missed this one, watch it because it's just a cut above. It's a cut above any zombie movie I've seen in a decade. So, that's all I can say is it's sort of a must watch for zombie movie fans. And even if you're not into it, Christy's not a big action movie person. She usually tunes out, but she found it very tense, and she ended up really liking it and got emotional. I think that's the thing about it. A lot of action movies are fun, and a lot of movies that are trying to be emotional are silly. I think this movie, the emotional parts got me emotional, and I'm not a big drama person, but I think that the connection between the father and the daughter is just great to watch, and it makes the emotional moments more impactful. And then as far as action, it's the most tense I've been watching a movie in a long time. I can't think of another movie I've seen recently that kept me like really tense, to the point where, when the movie's over, I felt like, oh, I can relax. Like I realized my whole body was tense for like a long enough amount of time. So I think for that, I think it's worth watching either way, but definitely a must watch for the zombie fan out there.
I don't think I can say it any better than what you did, Matt. So I'll just say go watch it. It's on Amazon Prime.
It's on Amazon Prime, it's on Shudder, and it's on Peacock.
Oh, okay.
Get your mother with that mouth.
I actually saw some peacocks today. It's kind of weird.
Excuse me?
Bacon pepper?
No, like the actual animal.
More on that story next week. Well, wait, let me do the closer. Wait, Trey, can you do the closer? You're better at it.
Oh, just like this week in life, you come across a day in your life where you worked a lot and you sweat tears and blood, and you just want to watch a good movie. And maybe you do, and maybe you don't. But if you like zombie movies, this is your movie. To what Matt Sterling says. Not for me, but if you like zombie movies, there you go. But you know what? Next week it's a big week. It's Eternals. An Oscar-winning director is coming in to direct a movie for the Marvel Universe. Come join us then for the Film Schmucks.
Cut it.